So there's actually a pretty interesting video that was posted over to the Progressive Voice subreddit. Make sure to go subscribe. If I remember, I'll leave a link in the description box, but you know how to search it up. Our Progressive Voice user NBA Live Mobile 10 posted this video up. It's a video of CNN, Brian Stelter on CNN. He actually name checks the Young Turks, and it seems to be a conversation about Joe Biden. Obviously, you guys saw the whole situation with the Ducey guy and him calling him a son of a bitch and forgetting the hot mic was on. I don't even know if he honestly forgot based on the video. It kind of seemed like it wasn't even a mistake kind of thing. It just kind of came out. But there's obviously a lot of media stuff going on. Biden also is pissed off at the media because he feels like, and this is, I think, largely true, he's not really good at campaigning, potential successes, like, the COVID package and stuff like that. And a lot of your approval rating is going to be dependent upon how you market yourself and how you market your successes. So usually, even if you do good stuff but you can't market it, typically you are going to be looked at as like not as good. So he was basically going after the media. I think privately he even was doing it. And so I guess Brian Stelter is going to ask the question of, why is he not going to progressive media like the Young Turks? And I don't know what the other outlet is that he's talking about. But obviously, the Young Turks is absolutely massive. It's the biggest progressive, show out there. It's huge with more normie folks, which is really good. And so he's going to ask this question. He's going to compare and contrast it with conservative media with Trump. So check it out.
Became a big story. Philip, shouldn't the White House be talking to progressive media more? I thought the political point was really interesting. That outlets like the Young Turks and Positive America don't get lots of interviews and access. I know the relationship between conservative media and Trump was very different, obviously. Trump basically had a Fox News White House. Biden doesn't want that. But shouldn't he pay more attention to progressive media?
So why exactly is Joe Biden not going on the Young Turks? Now, the reason why Joe Biden and, Barack Obama and them are not going on the Young Turks is very simple. It's because they criticize them. And so they're not going to want to go on to those channels. And the thing is, when you go on those places, you give them more credence. So, still like Democrats would do interviews on Fox News. I don't know if they do them anymore. But, like Obama had an interview with O'Reilly. Bill Clinton had an interview with Bill O'Reilly. Maybe even multiple. So, they still went on, but Fox News is so massive. I guess maybe your appearance doesn't necessarily boost its credence. Maybe it's not enough when you want to reach out or something like that in terms of a trade-off. But this is the thing, right? This is why it's so important for progressive politicians themselves, like the squad members, to appear on shows like, the Majority Report and stuff like that. Now, I guess the other side of that is, there are a lot of questionable actors like Jimmy Dore, for example, and a bunch of other very questionable actors who are quick to flip on a dime and all of a sudden turn out to be like a Republican like Jimmy Dore or Dave Rubin and people like that. So it's kind of risky and dangerous. Whereas like on these big CNN platforms and stuff like that, it's more stable. And you kind of maybe know your enemies in that situation. Whereas this, you're kind of like, who is this person? Is this person trustworthy? And also you're afraid that they're going to criticize you, right? So this is the problem, right? You're only going to go on a show if they are going to be nice to you. They're going to give you softball questions. And in the rare occasion you end up going on like a Fox News, it's because of a trade-off. It's because I have a chance to really get out there and boost myself in exchange for, is my appearance really giving it much credence anyways? Probably not that much, if any. So it's a trade-off situation where it's worth it. And so the reason why Joe Biden's not going to appear is because they're going to criticize him. Progressives are very critical of Joe Biden. And so that's the simple reason why. And also, comparing it to Trump and, right-wing media, I would say it just kind of goes to show you the more diversity of thought when it comes to in America, the left wing, right? I don't consider social democracy really to be a left wing ideology. At most left, it would be like some kind of barely left of center. But in America, certainly social democracy is a left wing ideology. So on the left in America, there is much more diversity in terms of thought than there is on the right wing. The right wing is much more rank and file. Whoever our guy is, get down on your knees and just go full throttle kind of thing. Whereas more on the left, it's much more diverse, and this is kind of why you see more fighting between like a Hillary and Bernie, and there's still going to be some, largely people are still going to fall from Bernie to Hillary in the general, but there will still be some kind of differences going on, whereas, it's going to be more rank and file everyone's going to hate on Ted Cruz because he's at the RNC and hasn't mentioned Trump and that kind of stuff. And people will fall in line at the end of the day. And the few people that don't, they'll be excommunicated, as we've seen with a bunch of, right-wing hosts. So that is going to be another reason. There's just simply more diversity of thought and opinions on the left. It's not as rank and file. It's not as easy to get people to fall in line because there's so much different levels of thought and, how anti-interventionist are you, how much should the government implement itself into the economy and stuff like that. And so progressives largely, they don't fall in line with the ideology of a Joe Biden or a Barack Obama because it's simply too tame. And social democracy in and of itself is very tame, right? It's very centrist to want universal health care. It's very centrist to want free college education, all of these things, a living wage. These are all very centrist things. But in the United States' Overton window, it's considered to be, like super left wing, which obviously it's not. And so that's the reason why. But it's really important at the same, the reason also is going to be because, Joe Biden appearing on the Young Turks would be huge for the credibility of the Young Turks. It would really boost the Young Turks' credibility if someone like Joe Biden went on. Having the president on your show is going to be a huge boost to the credibility of your show. And so he doesn't want to give a progressive outlet that's either already criticizing him or is liable to be criticizing him in the future. He doesn't want to give an outlet like that that kind of power. And that the same goes for, establishment liberals and stuff like that. They're not going to want to do that. And so for progressive politicians, AOC, Ilhan Omar, the answer to this issue of media, which is mainstream media controls people's minds because people are not seeing what's happening themselves. The news tells them what's happening. They don't see it with their own eyes. And so they have to rely on what the news tells them. And so everything is a narrative. So you can have a different image in your mind of something based upon how the narrative is put to you. And that's one of the most fascinating things, definitely, that I've thought about. And so one of the solutions to that issue is switching to independent media. And so I would say that there's a credible argument that makes it kind of tough is that there are very shady figures like Jimmy Dore and Dave Rubin who, will fake being left-wing and turn Republican, or they're just complete loony bin lunatics, like, drunkards and just drug addicts like Jimmy Dore. And they're very liable to just spaz out like that. And so it's kind of risky. So I can kind of understand why you maybe don't want to go on there. But going on shows like The Majority Report, The Rational National, Secular Talk, these kinds of shows, it not only boosts the credibility of those shows, it actually takes the power away from the mainstream media outlets. Now, these politicians still need to appear on the MSM outlets just because, there's so much to gain from appearing on there, right? But at the same time, obviously, you can take away a lot of that power and give it to someone like the Young Turks and things like that. The good thing about the Young Turks is they have a huge audience, but their audience is much more normie. So it's kind of like a gateway, and it's good to have a really big show that's able to appeal to people who are not already ideologically in agreement with you. And, you can convince other people who are maybe Hillary supporters to maybe be at least liking Bernie Sanders, at least not hating Bernie Sanders, right? So that's obviously a very beneficial thing, and that's the reason why it's really important. As much as people, understandably may not be a fan of maybe some of the more centrist takes or explanations on the Young Turks, you have to understand that the role that they play is being that gateway towards the left and supporting Bernie Sanders, which is a really important thing. You can't just be in your echo chamber. You're never going to grow your ideology if you just preach to the choir all the time. So you have to be able to convince other people. And so that's the role that the Young Turks plays. And so, I'm sure that's how I first started to get into progressive YouTube and stuff. I think most people are like that unless you're newer. But Young Turks gave credence to a lot of the currently established channels like Secular Talk and David Pakman's show and stuff like that. Even the Majority Report is under their umbrella. I think they're still under their umbrella. So, they help them grow a lot. And so they provide that gateway. And as you continue to go more and more into being social democrat, lefty or whatever, maybe you move on to a Secular Talk or the Rational National or Humanist Report or something like that. That's more, going to be more left wing. And that's fine. That's kind of the way it goes. So, if you've been really deep into kind of like lefty politics or whatever you want to call it, and you're still watching the Young Turks as your primary source, that would surprise me, because TYT plays that very important role, the vital role of more being the sort of more gateway area. So I would expect you to watch maybe a Secular Talk or Rational National, or maybe this channel or something like that. But yeah, that's what's going on. Interesting to see. Even the Young Turks getting mentioned on CNN is obviously big for the channel as well. And, you know, this is a result of Cenk, you know, I think him going on CNN and these other outlets. And so it's really important for this kind of stuff to happen. This is how you give credence to alternative media like the Young Turks.